Hello everyone and welcome back to the Final Chicane with me, Kristen Boylan. Honestly guys, I thought we would have like a little cute little episode today. I didn't expect, I was watching the Hungarian Grand Prix and I was like, I'm on my holidays, this is good, I won't have to spend forever making this podcast. But then here we are with so much to talk about that I had to get up early just to organise my thoughts on the whole Hungarian Grand Prix weekend. I am, as I said, on my holidays. You can probably see that I'm in a bit of a new location. This is just a one-stop location. I'll be back for the next race. What is it? Belgium, the Belgium Grand Prix review. Also, before I start about today's episode, I will say I know that I said that the interview with the Red Bull employee was coming out last week, I think, but I didn't realise that it actually had to be reviewed by Red Bull before it got posted. So I'm still waiting for the Red Bull comms team to review it, which is fine because now Red Bull have to watch my podcast, which is actually sort of iconic, to be honest. So yeah, I'll post that whenever I have it. But sorry for that delay. I know I did say that. I lied, basically. Got a bit ahead of myself, so sorry about that. But we'll talk about the Hungarian Grand Prix now, and we'll start with the riddle of the week. Okay, here it is. I raced in F1 from 89 to 01, with only one win, but a good podium run. For Ferrari I drove, with skill and might. In Canada 95, I had my day of delight. Who am I? A driver of French acclaim, with a single victory to my name. This is quite a popular past Formula 1 driver, so see if you know who it is, and I'll tell you the answer and the story behind this person at the end of today's episode. We should probably get into the Hungarian Grand Prix weekend from start to finish. Drama, a lot of media moments, a lot to process from the race itself. I don't know. Let's just start at the media moments like usual. Kevin Magnussen is going to be out of Formula 1 at the end of 2024, start of 2025. He does not have a contract for next year, basically. When I first saw that, obviously there were rumours that he was gone for quite a while. I've spoke about it on the podcast, but I assumed it was sort of like a Kevin had his time and he was sort of ready to go. And then obviously Haas, have quite a few options on their plate there, so they were probably okay with that too. But obviously that did turn out not to be the case with Kevin, obviously saying that he would have liked to stay with Haas, but he didn't get a contract or whatever. He also made it clear that he doesn't want a reserve role with Haas, but he would be open to working with Haas in some sort of format. As an employee, I guess, on the team doing whatever, but not as a reserve driver, and he would only do that if he didn't get a seat elsewhere. Now, he said obviously he'll try to get a seat in Formula 1, but he's interested in looking at other motorsport categories, which we've seen in Kevin. He has a big interest in a lot of different ranges of single-seater racing and potentially endurance racing, anything like that. I think would be nice to see him dip his toes into something like that. Is that the phrase? Dip his toes? I don't know, I hate that phrase actually, I'm never going to say that again. But yeah, so reserve driver I think is out of it for Haas. Yeah, he hasn't had the most successful season as of now. He's done alright, he's just been a bit messy I think, and he's realised that, and I'm excited to see how he does for the remainder of his season in Formula 1. I don't think he would get a seat elsewhere, not that I wouldn't like to see him continue in Formula 1, but I just think that it would be more unlikely for him to get that seat. Who would take Kevin's seat, because we know Hulk is also gone and Ollie Behrman will be replacing Hulk, so who's going to take Magnussen's seat? Well, that rumour has largely been speculated as Esteban Ocon, who obviously lost his seat with Alpine this year, but there's been a lot of rumours about Ocon recently, and the biggest one would be Williams, and that came out that Williams were trying to get Esteban in like right now, but during his seat fit he was apparently too tall. Now I know that that's not like adjustments have to be made, so maybe it's just a matter of they can't get him in like as soon as they would want to because they need to make whatever adjustments. I don't know if I believe that, because I just feel like the driver being too tall, like Alex Albon is in that car, but also quite harsh on Logan, which I've been saying for the past few weekends, obviously losing his seat like that, and now it's just unsure of if he's going to be at the next race or not must be incredibly mentally draining on Logan, and a horrible experience, I think, for a Formula One driver, but it is the way the sport works, and I get that. But I'm not completely satisfied with the way that the management, I guess, at Williams have carried this through with that uncertainty that's been on Logan for so long. Like, he hasn't been performing. I mean, recently he's definitely stepped it up. He had a good weekend. I would call it a good weekend this weekend, but compared to Alex, obviously he's not on par. And if Williams don't think he's good enough to be in the team, then that's fine and that's up to them. But I think you gotta just let him go or keep him on. I feel like it's just a little cruel to sort of just string him on and string him along, like, just let him go. With the whole McLaren Daniel situation, like, just tell him he's fired when you sign Oscar. Like, don't tell him he has a seat and then go on for another month or two about how, no, Daniel's staying with us when you'd already signed another driver. Like, just fire him and just get it done with. That's always going to be my opinion. Like, Formula One is a hard sport. Formula One is a cruel sport, but I don't think it always needs to be as cruel as it is. I think Esteban Ocon would be better going to Haas for him. Williams, I don't know the state of Williams. I think there's very interesting theories, like, say, if Adrian Newey was to go to Williams, and if Williams took that step up, like, I think most of us would just love to see Williams back up there. But I don't think we've seen substantial proof that that's going to happen anytime soon. So where Alpine are, I guess Williams would be quite a big step up, actually. But I think Haas are still that bit ahead of Williams. So I think anyone trying to get a seat next year would be trying to get to Haas before they go to Williams. And yeah, Kevin's decision was quite recent. It only came after Silverstone, he said, which, yeah, that's I'm sure he expected it for a while, but quite a recent thing, which is always going to be tough. Carlos, I can't wait to the day that I can just give an update on what Carlos is doing, because I have no idea. Like, I have no idea. Like, I don't even know what the rumours are anymore. I think most of the rumours are that his time is just run out with this team and that they're just trying to sign a driver and he's not giving them any clue of where he wants to go. Where does he want to go? Is Mercedes even still an option? Is he waiting to see if Max would go to Mercedes and then he can jump in at Red Bull? Would Red Bull want him? I don't know. I'm interested to hear people's opinions on the whole Carlos situation, because I'm struggling to form my own. That also brings me on to the Max topic. It's become a bit louder over the weekend that Max might actually be considering Mercedes, because Red Bull, obviously the power struggle that's going on with helmet and the upgrades just haven't been working, and there's a bit of conflict within the team, and you could even see in the interaction between Max and GP, who they have a great relationship, they have a close relationship, but there just seems to be tension there. And I don't know if Max is going to want to stay around for that. I don't know. I can't see him going to Mercedes next year. I don't know, because you literally never know in Formula One. I think that's an interesting one to keep an eye out on. That would also solve some problems for VCarb, because, okay, say Max is gone, you put Daniel there. I don't know what's happening with Perez, but just say Perez goes somewhere else, you put Yuki there. Just promote them both to Red Bull and then get Liam and Hajar into VCarb. I feel like I've probably been a little bit harsh on Perez recently, but that's just because he is incredibly underperforming. But also, they say in Formula One a lot of the time that, and I feel like I might have talked about this in my last episode, but when you're underperforming and it's constantly weighing down on you, you're just going to get worse with all that media pressure. And Daniel was saying as well in the media this weekend that he can see what Perez is going through, because he went through a similar thing in McLaren, and that, it's always going to be hard for a driver. Perez didn't have a bad race this weekend, but qualifying was just a disaster again. Yuki also, just going back to Red Bull and RB situation, Yuki also made his comments on if Liam Lawson got promoted to Red Bull, which I do agree with. He said that it would be weird if Liam got promoted before him, and I agree. I can see the Liam wanting to go to RB and Liam deserving to be at RB, but being promoted straight to Red Bull over, say, Yuki, who, well, we know how Yuki's been performing and how dedicated Yuki has been to the Red Bull system would be weird, and I would be rioting, I guess, if I was Yuki. And that's not a thing. I don't think Liam is going to be promoted to Red Bull. I know he had his test that was set up for a while, and I have seen that wasn't as good as Red Bull might have hoped, but obviously there's no really official documentation from that test, so that's all just rumours basically that I'm talking about. Also, another media moment was quite a big one, that Ralf Schumacher came out on social media, and I very quickly, just despite my opinions on Ralf Schumacher and despite maybe some of his more questionable remarks and presence in Formula One in recent and further than recent years, it is a very brave and important thing that he did by coming out and showing the fans and younger drivers who want to be in the sport that you can be yourself and you can be this person and be a Formula One driver, because we haven't seen that representation, and it's especially difficult with how Formula One are still driving in countries that have those anti-LGBTQ plus laws. It can be quite difficult, and you've seen the drivers, a lot of the drivers anyway, make that special effort to promote that inclusivity and promote that you can be yourself in every single way and still be this incredible sports person, and that nothing affects that. So I think that was a great move, and I know a lot of the drivers were asked about it on Media Day on Thursday, and a lot of them were like, they just think it's great, and it is a brave thing. It shouldn't have to be a brave thing to come out as a sports person and to come out on the internet, but it unfortunately is quite a brave thing, because I guess because of that risk that does exist for any drivers and even for the women in motorsport, with Formula One continuing its contracts and everything with those countries where it's basically dehumanized to be any sexuality other than straight. So good on Ralf Schumacher for that. A lot of upgrades this week. We saw Red Bulls didn't work. Mercedes and Aston Martin had the main biggest ones. Aston Martin, quite a good weekend. They sort of got back on it a bit. Mercedes too, you can see. Yeah, I'll move on to quali. I think there wasn't too much to talk about from the free practices. If you do want to know, I don't have my TikToks up because my TikToks got removed for violating community guidelines, being promoting something dangerous, and that's because I showed Formula One in my TikTok, and they were like, no, this is dangerous and you're promoting it to people, and they removed my TikTok. Like, that's my career, guys. You can't remove me showing Formula One on TikTok. I'm not promoting people to get into a Formula One car. I'm just showing you what happened in free practice. So if TikTok could get that together and stop removing my TikToks, that would be great. I started showing them from further away, and now I think it's okay. But I had 4 removed. I had all my free practices TikToks removed for that, which was a little disappointing. Quali, wet track, wet qualifying. That was the last thing I wanted to hear on qualifying day, because they didn't have any running in wet. They were not prepared for that. And I was so excited to see the teams that I wasn't expecting to see do well, like Sauber and Orbi, even Williams. They were up there on the hot temperatures. And I was like, no, because wet quali switches everything up. But quali was exciting. It was probably one of my favourites of the year. Despite it being a wet qualifying, it was still dry enough to go onto the slicks, to go onto the softs for Q1, which is what we saw. But the track was drying, so the laps were getting faster. And then it was raining again, and it was like timing for your lap mattered so much for a while. A lot of people set their laps, and it was quite representative of what we would have thought they would have been at that point. I know Hülkenberg and Daniel had issues, so they didn't get a good lap set, which was a disaster when Checo crashed and brought out the red flag. Obviously, for Checo, the last thing he needed, with all that media noise around him, I don't know if it was like an under pressure thing. It's not the most. It wasn't a dumb mistake. It was quite a reasonable mistake to make at the track. We've seen it throughout the weekend. We've seen people have a little bit of wobbles in that position, but I do feel for Checo and the amount of hate he would have got after that, and the amount of pressure and the words that were probably said in Red Bull over that as well. And it did look like Q1 would just end like that with everyone going out. Obviously the clock did stop. It stopped at quite a good time, but also it allowed the track to dry a bit. There was rain and then the track could dry during the red flag. And I didn't think any of the times were going to improve. Some people decided not to come back out. Alpine decided not to come back out. Why? I don't know. I don't know what Alpine were doing this weekend. I'm sorry. I would love to do a little positive episode about Alpine because you know me and I love to do my little positive. I like to bring the teams up rather than bring them down, but I just don't know what to say about Alpine right now. So Gasly finished P20 and Ocon P19. Oh my God, but Daniel went to P1 because I was like looking at it and I was like, oh my God, great. Daniel, after looking pretty good all weekend, is going to be out in Q1. No, he did his lap and went straight to P1. I was living for that moment. Obviously a difficult qualifying session for Russell as well, P17. I think, if I got this right, there was a few problems, but a problem with the field. The car wasn't field right and everything, and they just got it wrong for that. And George, who was looking good and who did quite exceptional during the actual race, obviously his weekend was sort of over by qualifying P17 at that track. Not the easiest track to overtake, not the easiest temperatures to drive in either. Sargent, actually quite impressive, finishing P14, Albon P13. Hamilton in Q2 just on the cusp of getting through a P10 was a bit risky, holding my breath a bit for that. And Daniel through as well. Obviously Yuki, really good lap, really put together. Then Q3, more rain was expected. Yuki had that quite a big crash actually. It really looked like a big impact. He jumped a bit in the air. I think it was probably level change between the track and the runoff sort of area. But unfortunately, that was the end of his Q3 session. And yeah, obviously another red flag. I think it was like 2 minutes 30 left, so they could get around again. And I think everyone bar potentially Carlos got around again, and Max and Alonso decided not to go out because they didn't think they would improve. The only driver who did improve on their original time was Daniel Ricciardo. And he just jumped Yuki and went into P9 with Yuki starting P10. Both McLarens in the top two. Lando, another pole. Piastri P2. I mean, I haven't really spoken about McLaren yet because I will get onto that. I'm sure that you know. McLaren were just at the front of the line when everyone was going out, trying to hold everyone up. Did you actually see the radio message between Oscar and Tom Sallard? His engineer was like, I can't tell if it's Daniel or Yuki behind you in the pit lane. And Yuki was like, or Oscar was like, yeah, it's probably not Yuki because he's missing a few tires. It was Daniel, obviously, because Yuki had crashed out. So yeah, it was an interesting qualifying. I mean, the end of Q3, Q1. I think it should go Q3, Q2, Q1, to be honest, because that makes more sense in my head. And I've probably mixed that up a few times because that's how I see it in my head. But end of Q3, bit unexciting. I know Daniel was the only time to improve, but an exciting qualifying in general. We didn't really need much more excitement to that. The race. I feel like I just need to take a breath for a race. It's quite warm in here. I've got my fan. I'll fan the microphone so you guys can just take a moment before we discuss the race. Okay. You know, I was supposed to be watching the race from a boat. We had a boat day planned and the boat day ended at 3 and the race began at 3. So I was planning on watching from my phone, but then it was too windy on that morning. So our boat, we couldn't go out on the boat because it was too windy. And so I was like, okay, this is either going to be the best race ever. And someone up there was like, girl, you need to be sitting in front of a TV to watch it, or it's going to be the worst race ever. And this is actually just punishment for something. I don't know. It was quite a mid-race, to be honest. It was none of the above. I probably would have preferred to watch it from the boat. But yeah, Lando started off a little shaky on Sunday. He had some problems before the race, but they all got sorted. I was a little concerned. I did predict that he would DNF because of that. In my TikTok, if you've seen that, we all got it wrong. We actually jinxed everyone we said would do well, I think. I was like, Daniel will win, Lando will DNF. At one point, Daniel was P20, and I was like, what did I do? I take full responsibility for that. Obviously, one of the most vulnerable races for Max Verstappen that I've seen in quite a long time. You know what, I'll start with McLaren and I'll just go through McLaren's race because I know I usually do like sort of lap by lap in that order and talk about everything like that. But I just sort of need to focus on one team at a time for this. So poor start from Lando. Unfortunately, we've seen that a couple of times. He hasn't had the best start, but he immediately lost pole position. He lost the P1 to Oscar and then got overtaken by Max. There was a bit of being pushed off, whatever you think about that. And then Max potentially gaining that advantage. I probably would have labelled it as a lap 1, turn 1 instant. But Red Bull decided to give the place back to Lando, which was probably the better decision anyway, just in case, because you wouldn't want to risk Max getting a penalty at that stage. But also you can see with stuff like that, we haven't seen from Max in a while because he's been so far ahead. He just seems to be slightly cracking a little bit. He has been making more mistakes. It might just be because he's actually physically closer to the cars now. Maybe he's not used to that since, it's only been 2 years, I guess. But he does appear to be more stressed now, more nervous, and I think it's completely normal. And it's like, it humanizes Max a little. And I hope this isn't coming across as digs to Max because you know that I've nothing against Max and a lot for Max, but some cracks are appearing and he is making more mistakes and he is sounding more panicked on the radio. He has always been like that. Like, I know he gets stressed on the radio at times, but usually it's for like a bit and then he's like, okay, but for this race he just seems stressed most of the time. I think he's realising also that not only is his world championship sort of at risk, but also he doesn't have that support right now of his teammate to help him out with that. And he has had that because Checo has done a great job at that in recent years. So all of that is probably just adding a bit much and he's just a bit overwhelmed by it all, I'd say. So Max did give that position back to Lando and Lando took back P2, so it was a McLaren at P1 and P2 for a while. Oscar was going quite well. He did make a couple of mistakes. He went wide and he probably bruised up his tyres a little bit, but that was quite soon before they were planning on pitting anyway, which is okay. He had a 3-second gap, I think, to Lando, and then it went to 1.5 anywhere, sort of ranging below 2 after he went a bit wide after that. And then the curse of the strategies, because what were the strategists doing this weekend? So much respect for the strategists, but what in every team? I guess not in every team. Not every team got it wrong, but so many teams got it wrong this weekend. I don't understand pitting Lando first, because Oscar he went wide and he still maintained that gap from Lando, or a gap, even if it was a smaller gap, he still had that slightly better pace. They were quite similar throughout the race. But they pitted Lando under the disguise that there was a threat from Hamilton behind. I didn't think that. I don't think that mattered at all. I don't think Hamilton was going to be threatening Lando for P2 at any point of that, whether he pitted then or 2 laps after. Oscar was leading the race. In my opinion, Oscar should have been given priority over that first pit stop, considering how powerful the undercut had been proven to be so far in that race. And then unfortunately, Oscar didn't help his case. He didn't have the fastest pit stop, but he didn't help his case also by going on the outlap from the pit stop, going wide again and losing even more time to Lando, who had obviously got ahead of him after the pit stop. So before that, it was Oscar's race to win clearly, and then it became Lando's race to win. And all of this drama and everything that unfolded was not at all at the fault of Lando or Oscar. It was completely the team strategy, and I haven't seen if they've taken full responsibility for that or not. But it absolutely is. What should have been a clean 1-2 for McLaren became such a mess, and they're lucky that it ended up the way that it did. So race orders came into quite significant play. The radio message between Lando and his engineer were unreal. I'll read out some of them to you because I know some people have to watch without sound and whatever, and they're quite hard to remember. But I just felt like that was just a little step too far, the radio messages, because they were almost guilt-tripping Lando, I think. And Lando, he's only won once before. Like, that win would be important to him. And it's not his fault that they messed up the strategy and they screwed Oscar over a bit. I mean, they've messed up Oscar's strategy for the second race in a row, but they're lucky that it was Lando taking the lead of the race because, Oscar would be done if it wasn't that. At lap 53, Lando's engineer had to ask for a radio check because Lando had gone radio silent and asking to save tyres. I don't think Lando really needed to save. I know Oscar was saving tyres at that point, so he was falling a bit off Lando, and Lando wasn't really saving tyres, so the gap probably looked a bit more significant than it was if Oscar was actually pushing full on. One of the messages was, "You need to save more tyres, please, and we do want you to let Oscar through," which Lando replied, "Well, you should have boxed him first then, surely no." Will replied, "It doesn't matter," and Lando replied, "I mean, it does to me, maybe," which is fair, because as a Formula 1 driver, you're never going to want to throw away a win for anyone, especially not your second win ever, and especially not when you're second in the championship. Do I think that they should have let Lando keep P1 or maybe even let them fight because Lando's P2? No, not at this point. I mean, it will be brutal if Max ends up winning the championship to Lando by 6 or less points, or 7, whatever the maths is. I'm not too sure. But at this point, I mean, after the summer break might be a little bit of a different story. But right now, I think it was right to just... Oscar deserved that win, and I think it was right to let Oscar have that win, but I wouldn't have swapped their positions. I think they just should have boxed Oscar first. I wouldn't actually be in this situation, so I wouldn't have to make that decision. So yeah, throughout the laps, Lando was being told that Hiroshi was being stressed about the tyres. In lap 61, he told Lando that both cars are using their tyres too much and said, "Just remember every single Sunday morning meeting we've had." And Lando replied, "Yeah, well, tell him to catch up, please." And lap 64, Will said, "Lando, he can't catch you up. You've proved your point and it really doesn't matter." And Lando said, "He's on much quicker tyres. I mean, I would have tried to undercut anyway. If I did, I would have got more." And Will said, "Mate, we did the stop sequence in this order for the good of the team. I'm trying to protect you. I promise I'm trying to protect you." And then lap 66, he said, "Lando, the way to win a championship is not by yourself. It's with the team. You're going to need Oscar and you're going to need the team." The guilt trip in there is insane. If Lando won, it would not feel good in the slightest because of everything that's been said on the radio. And I mean, I don't think the team would have hated him. And obviously, Oscar didn't say too much on the radio. He was just "Look, we're risking it if he doesn't let me pass now." Oscar stayed quite calm and controlled through it all, but it was unfair on both Lando and Oscar. And for Oscar to have that win with that much controversy, and with Lando probably being so upset and a little angry with the team, and potentially Oscar just through Oscar's association with the fact that he won and Lando didn't. It's disappointing that is Oscar's first win, because Oscar is one of the most promising drivers we've seen in Formula 1 in a long time, and he has many wins coming and potentially championships coming. So I would have preferred him to get a little nicer win. A lot of people were like, "Oh, his radio message was so subdued." I was like, honestly, I don't think it was. I think that's just Oscar. I think obviously he wasn't as happy and excited as he could have been, but I don't think it would have been any screaming on the radio or anything. He'd just be like, "Okay, good job, guys," because that's just Oscar. Oscar's mom also, Nicole, on Twitter is my favorite account ever. She's so funny. I'm sort of sad she wasn't at the race for Oscar's first win, but yeah, she cancelled her Pilates class in the morning, she said. So what an iconic woman. I was incredibly happy for Oscar. I said my prediction earlier this year was that Oscar would get his first win before Lando, which I was wrong about, and I'm quite happy I was wrong about that, because I'm happy Lando got his win, and now they've both got wins, which I'm so excited about. But yeah, there's going to be some serious talks going on in McLaren this weekend. I'd love to be flying the wall, to be honest, but I'd hate to be a real human in those talks. Then the second point of drama, I guess, was the Hamilton-Max clash, the first one we've saw since 2021. Did they have any clashes in 2022? I don't think so. But obviously Max was not happy this weekend. He was speaking to Daniel before or during the drivers' parade. I think the camera picked up what he was saying a bit about how the upgrades aren't working and it's not good in the corner and the rear is not good and everything like that. So he wasn't happy even before the race, and I'm guessing he's raging after it. You could tell on his radio he's getting really It was getting a bit spicy. It was getting a bit worrisome. What's the word? Worry. I don't know. It was just, I was worrying, I guess. The tension was there between GP and Max, and we know that they have a great relationship, GP and Max. But didn't he like tell Max to stop being childish or something? I have to look back. I haven't examined the Max GP radios yet, but obviously Max was stressed and GP just wanted to keep the race clean and everything like that. And he knows Max, and he probably knows that Max might go a little, might crack a little under pressure because of the stress that Max goes through and everything that's riding on this. Like, it's a championship for Max, it's a championship for Lando too, and we see that, like, when Lando's on pole, I don't think he's ever won from pole before. He usually gets overtaken on the first lap. We can see when that extra pressure is added to every single driver on the grid, they crack. We've seen it with Lewis, we've seen it with Max and Lando and Daniel and Alonso and everyone. This isn't any personal attack against Max or Lando, it's just how it is. I examined pressure on sports people for one of my essays before, and it is quite an interesting thing to look at. So obviously there was that lockup from Max, and nothing really came about from that. Obviously Max lost his positions, but Lewis kept it together to finish P3. A very, very strong race from Lewis. Lewis has been looking incredible recently, and it's so nice to see him back up there and looking as strong as he is right now. V-Carb. Ooh, that fumble from V-Carb was so frustrating because Yuki, I was like, okay, Yuki and Daniel are both on horrific strategies, but Yuki's strategy didn't turn out to be too bad at the end. Daniel's strategy was horrendous. He started on mediums. Him and Yuki immediately got swallowed up by all the cars behind them that started on softs, which was expected. But then they pitted Daniel on mediums the same lap as they pitted everyone on softs. Now, my love for V-Carb. One of my favorite teams. They're my boys, my girls, my people. But that fumble was awful to watch. I was literally looking at the TV in disbelief when Daniel in pit came on like lap 6 or something like that. Daniel, I wasn't the only one raging. Daniel was raging as well. He was like, he was pitted quite late, so he didn't really have time to talk about it. He just had to pit and get it done with. So not only did he lose those positions, he couldn't even gain those positions back because now everyone who had overtaken him on the softs were still on fresher tyres. And then they put Yuki on a different strategy. They put him on a one stop, and Yuki, his tyre management was absolutely insane. Yuki did an incredible job managing those tyres. He pitted way into the 30s. I didn't write down here what lap Yuki actually pitted on, but he pitted very, very late. And we know that Daniel has incredible tyre management as well. They both do. So there's no reason why Daniel had to pit to like 30 laps earlier than Yuki on the same tyres when they can both manage their tyres well. And with Daniel and Yuki both doing quite well over the weekend, I know obviously Yuki's a little crash, but they were looking promising after a disappointing weekend in Silverstone. It was so frustrating to see that, and especially on a weekend that meant so much and was so important to Daniel for his career. Like, so what about trying to get that Red Bull seat? He's trying to keep his Visa Cash App or B seat, and it has to be the most frustrating thing in the world when it's looking like you're underperforming when it's nothing that you can actually do, because he drove fast. He was 2 tenths faster than Yuki in the overall pace of the race, and they pitted for the second time. Daniel pitted at the same time as Yuki. So towards that, they were on the same tyres for the same amount of time. But obviously a lot of people won't be looking at that, and a lot of people will just be looking at his results and being like, okay, no, Daniel needs to go. So after Daniel saying so much that these last 2 races before the summer break are the most important to him, it is so frustrating for him for that to happen. And then you see his post-race interview. He said he was expecting an apology from V-Carb before that, which he didn't get, which made him even more angry. And he was just saying he was raging because then he was being told, okay, no, you need to fight off Stroll behind you, who was on faster tyres. And he was like, how can they expect me to fight off a car that's already faster than us with a driver that's on faster tyres? So it's not too common we see angry Daniel, but he was furious, and his immediate post-race radio was saying something like, I'll bite my tongue, but I hope like you feel like you understand, to Pierre, his engineer. Yeah, Pierre has sort of replied that he doesn't really know what to say to Daniel. Yuki, though, I will say a huge applause to Yuki for that race, because not only did he manage those tyres really well and he kept up the pace and he defended and everything like that, but he was injured. He was injured from his crash, and you could see him limping at the end of the race out of his car. So to pull that off while being injured is incredibly. I'm proud of Yuki for that. It's incredibly impressive. He was on a good strategy, or a better strategy, but that strategy would have only worked if he did as good of a job as he did as protecting those tyres and then pushing when he needed to and everything like that. So a really successful race for Yuki, and good to get points, well needed points, with both Haas's outside the points as well. George as well, unfortunate. It's unfortunate George's qualifying in P17, because he had a phenomenal race. His pace was incredible. He gained, I think he probably gained 10 or 9 places in that race, on a track that it's really not easy to overtake on. Obviously, he was behind slower cars, but still a really impressive race from George. I do think Hamilton has probably by now overtook him in the championship, which will probably be weighing on him a little, but I like that. I would love to see like a really good battle between George and Lewis where they're both at their best. Also, another good race, sort of in disguise, not really talked about too much, is Lance Stroll's race. His time management, like Yuki's, was exceptional, next to none. He did an incredible job on the softs. Yeah, Lance did an incredible job on the softs. He very quickly got past everyone that he needed to get past. His overtakes were clean and they were fast. I don't know if it's that Alonso has sort of been underperforming a little recently. The vibes of Alonso do seem to be a little off, and maybe that's boosting Stroll, or like making Stroll look a little better. But I think Stroll is being really strong recently, and I don't think you could criticise his race. Not even a bad race from Alonso at all, so it only will go up from here. Perez, not a bad race either, quite a successful race. I guess with Perez and George, it was like damage limitation without the damage, like just trying to regain what they lost with their poor qualifying. But yeah, I couldn't really fault Perez's race in the end. He managed his tyres well as well. Yeah, said the same word there. And just a good race. Alpine, the only note I have about Alpine is question mark, question mark, question mark. The drivers can only do so much. Like, the team just needs to sort of put it together by now. Especially like they're trying to get another driver for next year. And I mean, as much as like everyone would want to be a Formula 1 driver, they're like, okay, fine. The team needs to get it together. But I think that's everything from the race. I don't know if I've left anyone out. I mean, Haas, again, Magnussen and Hulk, not too much of a race. The strategies weren't really there for them either. Once again, it's the V-carbs stuck behind the Haas's, and the Haas DRS train was starting to form again. So a bit of a messy one there. Obviously, a clean enough race for both Ferraris. Charles held on to that. He wasn't really fighting for the podium, unfortunately. Carlos also had great pace on his fresh tyres as well. Yeah, a bit of a quiet weekend, but I think it was important for Charles to just get that better result, because I know since Monaco he hasn't really been getting the results that he would want to get, or, well, he absolutely hasn't been getting the results that he would want to get. He wants to be on the podium, he wants to be winning, but not a bad result. They kept it clean, the Ferraris, this weekend. Yeah, hopefully they can make another step forward in Spa next week. Will we do Riddle of the Week? So the answer of the Riddle Week was Giovanni Alessi, more commonly known as Jean Alessi, or Jean Alessi, however you pronounce his name sort of differs between two people. I think I pronounce it as Jean Alessi. He is French, and I'm a Spanish girl, I don't speak French, so that's where my downfall lies. But yeah, he's French, he has Sicilian heritage, and he debuted in Formula 1 in 1989 at the French Grand Prix for Tyrrell Racing. He raced for Tyrrell, Ferrari, Benetton, Sauber, Prost and Jordan, so he's been around. And he's only won once. He had his sole victory at the 1995 Canadian Grand Prix for Ferrari. He's so well known though in motorsport. He's well loved, and he's had some incredible drives, some incredible podiums, many podiums. And quite a long career as well. He was in Formula 1 from 1989 to 2001. He had 32 podium finishes. Right now, that's sort of like, I think Daniel Ricciardo has around 33 whatever. So maybe he was that sort of vibe, but obviously Daniel has more wins. He was a fan favourite. Obviously he didn't have that level of success, but I don't know, would it be a comparison? Because I was only born in 2002, so I wasn't watching when he was actually driving, so I only know what I read and what I look back on. But he's sort of given me Daniel vibes, I think. Like, no championship, but still like a fan favourite. But Daniel obviously has 8 race wins and 30 something podiums. So yeah, he had an incredible impact on the sport. He had a remarkable Monza sort of journey, and he did some remarkable things in Monza. I think he potentially finished P2 in Monaco before. He was driving the same era, obviously, as Ayrton Senna and Gerhard Berger. I feel like he was third in the championship during that sort of era. So yeah, well done if you got that right. I'm actually going to look a bit more into him because I think he sounds quite interesting. I am on my holidays. I think I said that already. But I hope that you realise that even if I'm on my holidays, I'm going to make my podcast and we're going to talk. And thank you for 500 subscribers. I was literally on 100 like a month ago because, I don't know, for some reason YouTube took a little longer for me to figure out, I guess. But thank you for 500. I think I'm potentially on 600 now. But yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Obviously, you can watch the video parts of this on Spotify as well, or YouTube, and any other podcast platform you're listening on. I love you, and you're iconic, and keep listening, please, because I always go through where the countries are, and I have my notifications on for YouTube as well. So I see like a lot of the comments and subscribers and everything, and just know that I appreciate it. And I think that's all for this week. I'll be back in my normal setting, doing my podcast, what review are we? Belgium Grand Prix next week. And then hopefully the interview with the Red Bull employee will be out soon because I had such a nice chat with her and I really enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.